The fluorescent lights buzzed above me, casting a harsh glare on my desk where my half-eaten sandwich sat forgotten. I could hear the clatter of keyboards and the muffled chatter of colleagues, but my mind was elsewhere, swirling with thoughts of the upcoming corporate party. I had been looking forward to this event, a chance to unwind, but everything changed during that lunch break. The unexpected dismissal felt like a slap in the face, and I replayed the moment in my head, desperately seeking understanding. "Ava, we need to talk," Mr. Thompson had said, his voice low and calm, but the look in his eyes betrayed his true intentions. As I sat there, the taste of betrayal lingered in my mouth, sharper than the mustard on my sandwich. My heart raced, and I could almost hear the echo of my colleagues' laughter from the break room, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing within me. I had worked tirelessly to climb the corporate ladder, only to be unceremoniously tossed aside. The whispers I'd overheard at the office party just days prior now replayed in my mind, confirming my worst fears about my dismissal. "She's just not a fit for the team anymore," I recalled one colleague saying, laughter punctuating their words. I felt a rush of anger and confusion. Was I really only a cog in their corporate machine? My fingers trembled as I typed a half-hearted message to Jordan, my partner, seeking comfort but unsure of how to articulate my turmoil. The betrayal cut deeper than I had anticipated, igniting a fire inside me that I couldn't quite comprehend. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious, and that fury began to morph into something more dangerous, an urge for revenge. The thought of reclaiming my power flickered in my mind like a candle in the dark. I needed to confront this injustice, to understand why I was cast aside like an unwanted gift. My breath quickened at the realization that I still had access to a $390 million system, a tool I could use to expose the betrayal. But would that be worth the risk? I was standing at a crossroads, and the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. Would I become the monster I despised, or could I find a way to wield my power for justice? The tension in my chest tightened as I contemplated my next move, knowing that the corporate party loomed ahead, a stage for the inevitable showdown with my former boss. The buzz of the coffee shop enveloped me like a warm blanket, the rich aroma of freshly brewed espresso mingling with the sweet scent of pastries. I sat at a small table, the smooth wood cool against my fingertips as I scrolled through emails on my laptop. This was my haven, a brief escape from the sterile confines of the corporate world that often felt suffocating. I could hear the soft chatter of patrons around me, their laughter a soothing backdrop to my thoughts. Yet beneath the surface of this apparent tranquility, I felt a growing unease about my role in the company. My phone buzzed on the table, snapping me from my reverie. It was a message from Lily. "Are you coming to the office party tonight? You know it's important for networking." I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the screen. The idea of mingling with my colleagues, pretending everything was fine, felt exhausting. But I knew I had to go, it was expected. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my decision settle heavily on my chest. As I arrived at the office party later that evening, a wave of vibrant colors and sounds washed over me. The walls were adorned with cheerful decorations, and the laughter of my colleagues echoed around the room. I forced a smile, reminding myself that this was part of fitting in, part of the corporate culture I had committed to. But as I sipped my drink, the taste was bittersweet, a reminder that I was playing a role in a game I didn't fully understand. I spotted Mr. Thompson across the room, his presence commanding and authoritative. A knot formed in my stomach. It was he who had always seemed to hold the keys to success in our company. I recalled the moments when I had felt proud of my contributions, believing I was part of something meaningful. But now those feelings were clouded by doubt. Would he see me as an ally or merely a pawn in his game? As the night progressed, I engaged in small talk, my laughter mingling with the others while my mind raced with thoughts of my future. I had dreams and aspirations, yet the pressure to conform loomed large. I felt the sting of disillusionment creeping in, a constant reminder of the fine line I walked between ambition and betrayal. The party was meant to be a celebration, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the surface, tensions simmered, waiting to boil over. After the party, I returned home, the cool air brushing against my cheeks, a stark contrast to the warmth of the gathering. I sat on my couch, the familiar fabric comforting yet heavy with the weight of my thoughts. I replayed the evening in my mind, grappling with the realization that I was on a precipice, teetering between fitting in and losing myself. My heart ached with uncertainty. I wanted to belong, but at what cost? The fluorescent lights in the conference room buzzed like angry bees, their harsh glare intensifying the discomfort that settled over me. My palms were slick against the cool surface of the table as I prepared to face Mr. Thompson. He leaned back in his chair, hands steepled beneath his chin, his expression a mask of feigned patience. I could feel the weight of his scrutiny, as if he were dissecting my every thought. The walls, adorned with corporate achievements, felt like they were closing in, reminding me of the high stakes that surrounded us. Ava, you must understand the broader implications of your actions, he began, his voice smooth yet laced with condescension. I swallowed hard, the bitterness of his words lingering on my tongue. I had expected resistance, but the calm assurance he exuded was infuriating. My mind raced, recalling the moments when I had sat in his office, eager to share ideas that had once sparked excitement. Now those memories felt tainted, overshadowed by his greed that had seeped into every interaction. I am trying to protect our client relationships, Mr. Thompson, I replied, my voice steady but low, each word carefully chosen to convey my resolve. I felt a slight tremor in my wrist as I gestured toward the reports scattered across the table, data I had gathered to support my position. The numbers were stark, and I hoped they would illustrate the urgency of my proposal. His eyes flickered to the documents, dismissing them with a wave of his hand, and my frustration boiled just beneath the surface. Protecting client relationships, or is this just a facade for your ambitions? He countered, a smirk creeping onto his face. The accusation hung heavy in the air, and I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to lash out. Memories of late nights spent poring over spreadsheets flooded my mind. I remembered the sacrifices I had made to prove my worth. Had it all meant nothing to him? I took a breath, focusing on the taste of resolve that filled my mouth. I believe in this company, Mr. Thompson. It's not just about numbers, it's about the people we serve. You know that as well as I do, I pressed, leaning slightly forward, the fabric of my blouse tightening against my chest. I needed him to see that I was not merely a pawn in his game. The tension crackled like static electricity, and I could sense the shifting dynamics in the room. For a fleeting moment, I thought I could see a flicker of something, perhaps respect, in his eyes, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. He shook his head, the smirk replaced with an icy glare. You're young, Ava, you don't yet grasp the realities of corporate survival. This is not a charity, and I won't allow your sentimentality to jeopardize our profits, he stated, his voice dripping with disdain. I felt my hands curl into fists beneath the table, the anger coursing through my veins like wildfire. I refuse to accept that this is the only way forward, I shot back, my voice gaining strength as I stood my ground. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, each thump echoing my determination. I was done being pushed around. I will not be reduced to a punchline in your pursuit of profit. We can find a way to balance our goals without sacrificing our integrity. Mr. Thompson's eyes narrowed, the flicker of amusement replaced with a hard edge. You're playing a dangerous game, Ava. Don't forget who holds the power here, he warned, his tone low and menacing. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I refused to let fear dictate my actions. My thoughts spiraled into a whirlwind of possibilities. How could I turn this injustice into an opportunity? As the meeting wrapped up, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. I left the conference room feeling like a soldier retreating from battle, bruised but not defeated. My resolve solidified with each step I took toward my office. I needed a plan, a way to reclaim my power in this ruthless corporate landscape. The idea of revenge began to take root, blooming in the shadows of my mind. This wasn't just about my position. It was about standing up for what was right and showing them that I wouldn't back down without a fight. The stakes had risen, and I was ready to play their game on my terms. The moment I received the message, my pulse quickened, a visceral response to the cold words on the screen. The dim light of my living room felt oppressive, wrapping around me like a shroud as I read the notification again, each syllable cutting deeper than the last. My breath caught in my throat. The text was from an anonymous source, revealing information that made my stomach churn with dread. It detailed how my former colleagues were already scrambling to cover their tracks, whispering about my impending downfall, their betrayal echoing in my ears. The very people I once considered friends were plotting my demise, and the reality of their treachery washed over me like a wave, suffocating and relentless. I paced the small confines of my apartment, the hardwood floor creaking beneath my feet, a stark contrast to the polished tiles of the office I had left behind. The walls seemed to close in, each breath becoming heavier as I fought against the rising tide of frustration. I felt like a marionette, strings cut, flailing without direction in a world where I had once been in control. Memories of past victories, of laughter shared over late-night deadlines, flickered like ghosts in my mind, haunting reminders of what I had lost. How had it come to this? As I glanced around my living space, the remnants of my old life felt like a cruel joke. The framed photos of my team smiling during celebrations now felt like artifacts from a bygone era, relics of trust shattered by ambition and greed. My fingers brushed against the edges of the images, the glass cool beneath my touch. I could almost hear the echoes of our laughter, yet the reality was starkly different. I was alone, and the weight of betrayal pressed down on me like a heavy fog. I sank onto the couch, my mind racing with thoughts that spiraled into dark corners of despair. How could I regain control of a situation that felt so utterly beyond my grasp? I needed a plan, something that could turn the tide back in my favor. My determination hardened, fueled by the flames of anger ignited by this new information. I refused to be a victim of their betrayal. I would reclaim my power, but at what cost? Picking up my phone, I scrolled through my contacts, searching for anyone who could help me navigate this treacherous terrain. The familiar names blurred before my eyes, each one a reminder of the support I had taken for granted. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over Jordan's name. He had always been my rock, but would he understand my desire for revenge? Doubts crept in, but I quickly pushed them aside. I needed allies, and I needed them now. Dialing his number, I felt a mix of vulnerability and resolve. As the phone rang, I felt my heart race with anticipation. The moment Jordan picked up, I launched into a hurried explanation, my words tumbling out in a rush. "Jordan, they're plotting against me. I need your help. I need to expose them before they ruin me completely. Can you meet me?" There was a pause on the other end, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his mind. Finally, he replied, his voice steady but laced with concern. "Ava, are you sure this is the way? Revenge can lead to a path of no return. We need to think this through." His words hung in the air, a reminder of the precarious balance between justice and recklessness. I felt the weight of his caution, but I was too far gone. The fire within me burned too brightly to be extinguished by doubt. I can't just sit back and let them destroy me. I need to fight back. Jordan sighed, the sound heavy with unspoken worries. "All right, let's meet. But we need to discuss this carefully. There are consequences to every action, Ava." As I hung up, a sense of determination washed over me, mingling with the lingering frustration. I would not allow their betrayal to define me. It was time to reclaim control and prepare for the battle ahead. The stakes were high, and I would need to tread carefully, but I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The plan to expose my betrayers was beginning to take shape, and with each passing moment my resolve solidified. This was just the beginning, and I was determined to see it through, no matter the cost. The coffee shop buzzed with the sound of clinking mugs and low conversations, yet I felt cocooned in a bubble of my own thoughts. The smell of roasted beans mingled with the sweetness of pastries, but I barely registered it, my mind racing. I had arranged this meeting with Lily, hoping to discuss my next steps and seek her advice. As I fiddled with the paper sleeve on my cup, I reflected on how far I had fallen from the confident woman I used to be. When Lily arrived, her expression was a mix of concern and determination. She slid into the seat across from me, and I could see the hesitation in her eyes as she searched for the right words. "Ava, I know things have been tough, but I really think you should consider another approach," she said, her voice soft but firm. The warmth of her concern both comforted and annoyed me. Did she not see the urgency of my situation? "I'm not sure there's a peaceful way to resolve this, Lily. They've made it clear that they're not interested in compromising," I replied, frustration creeping into my tone. I could feel my heart racing, the heat rising in my cheeks. The thought of facing Mr. Thompson again sent a shiver down my spine. The betrayal felt like a fresh wound, and I was desperate to find a way to heal it, if only for myself. Lily reached across the table, her hand resting lightly on mine. "I just worry that pushing back so hard could backfire. You could lose everything, Ava. Maybe it's time to step back and think about what you truly want," she urged, her eyes searching mine for understanding. I felt the weight of her words, yet the fire of my anger simmered just beneath the surface. I remembered the moment when I had first decided to confront Mr. Thompson about my dismissal. The memory was still vivid, the adrenaline coursing through my veins as I imagined the confrontation. I had envisioned a confrontation that would right the wrongs, but now, sitting across from Lily, I questioned whether that was even possible. The stakes were so high and the thought of failure was suffocating. "I need to show them that I won't be pushed around. This isn't just about me, it's about everyone who's been impacted by their decisions," I insisted, my voice rising slightly. Lily sighed, a mix of frustration and sympathy etched on her face. It felt like a tug-of-war between my need for justice and her desire for my safety. As our conversation unfolded, I could feel the walls of my resolve beginning to crack. The possibility of a peaceful resolution, however distant, lingered in the air, yet my anger was a potent fuel and I was uncertain if I could switch gears. The contrast felt jarring, a battle between my heart and my head. I had to make a decision soon, and the thought of what lay ahead filled me with both dread and determination. After we parted ways, I walked back to my apartment, the evening air cool against my skin. The city lights twinkled in the distance, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. I knew I had to gather evidence to expose Mr. Thompson, to lay the groundwork for my revenge. But the thought of crossing that line weighed heavily on me. Would I be sacrificing my own integrity in pursuit of justice? The questions loomed large as I prepared for the next chapter of this battle, caught in a web of hope and disappointment, each thread pulling me in conflicting directions. The corporate office loomed ahead, its glass facade reflecting the late afternoon sun, casting sharp shadows that felt like ominous warnings. My heart raced as I approached the entrance, each step heavy with the weight of the confrontation I was about to initiate. The scent of polished floors and faint burnt coffee hung in the air, a stark reminder of the sterile environment I had once thrived in. But today, it felt like a battleground. As I stepped into the elevator, the familiar ding echoed hollowly, and I could sense the tension coiling in my stomach. Memories of my last encounter with Mr. Thompson flooded my mind, his dismissive tone, the way he had belittled my concerns. I clenched my fists at my sides, feeling a surge of determination. I was not going to let him intimidate me again. This ends with me. The elevator doors slid open, revealing the bustling office floor. The sound of ringing phones and murmurs of colleagues filled the air, but everything felt muted as I made my way toward Mr. Thompson's office. I could almost hear the whispers of my colleagues, their judgment weighing heavily on me. Would they side with him, or would they see the truth of my intentions? As I reached his door, I hesitated, my breath catching in my throat. A flicker of doubt crept in. What if he dismissed my claims again? I could feel the sweat bead at my temples, my heart pounding like a war drum, but I steeled myself, reminding myself of the stakes. I had to confront him. I needed to reclaim my power. I knocked sharply, the sound reverberating through the quiet hall. "Come in," his voice boomed, brimming with authority. I pushed the door open, stepping into the lion's den. Mr. Thompson sat behind his massive mahogany desk, a picture of composure, but I could see the flicker of surprise in his eyes as he regarded me. "Ava, what brings you here?" he asked, feigning nonchalance. I could feel the tension in the air thickening, wrapping around us like a vice. "We need to talk about the recent decisions and their impact on the team," I stated firmly, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. I was ready for this fight, my voice would not waver. I will not be reduced to a punchline. His reaction would determine the course of my future, and I was prepared to lay it all on the line. As I spoke, I could feel the anticipation and fear swirling within me, mixing with a sense of liberation. This confrontation was my turning point, a moment that would either shatter my resolve or ignite a fire to fuel my revenge. I was ready to take back control, no matter the cost. As I settled into the dim light of my home office, the weight of my emotions pressed down on me like a lead blanket. The soft hum of the computer fan provided a soothing backdrop as I prepared to map out my revenge against Mr. Thompson and the betrayal that had shattered my faith in the corporate world. The cool surface of my desk felt grounding, a stark contrast to the chaos swirling in my mind. Each keystroke echoed my resolve as I opened a blank document, ready to outline my plan. I began by typing out the key points I needed to address, evidence of the unethical practices that had been hidden under layers of corporate jargon. Memories of late-night meetings flooded my mind, where I had unwittingly been a pawn in Thompson's games. I recalled the way he would smile, his eyes glinting with ambition, masking the greed that lurked just beneath the surface. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard for a moment, feeling the weight of the lives I might disrupt, but the fire of determination surged within me. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my power. After jotting down my thoughts, I leaned back in my chair, allowing the implications of my actions to wash over me. The stakes were high, and I had to tread carefully. I envisioned how the evidence could be presented, how it would paint a picture that could not be ignored. My heart raced as I considered the risks involved. If I failed, I could lose everything. The thought of Thompson's smug face, his condescending laughter ringing in my ears, fueled my resolve. I pulled out a notebook, its pages crisp and inviting, and began to sketch out the timeline for my plan. I needed to gather support, discreetly reach out to others who had been wronged, and present my findings to the board. Each point I wrote down felt like a step closer to my goal, yet the uncertainty of potential backlash loomed large. The memories of my colleagues' faces twisted in disappointment flashed before me, reminding me that I was not just fighting for myself, but for those who had suffered under Thompson's rule. As the evening wore on, I felt a blend of anxiety and excitement coursing through me. This was my chance to turn the tables, to transform my pain into something powerful. I took a deep breath, envisioning the moment when I would confront Mr. Thompson, armed with undeniable proof of his misdeeds. I would not be a victim any longer. I was ready to fight back. This was not just a plan. It was my liberation. The corporate office buzzed with an electric tension as I stood before the massive glass doors, my heart pounding against my ribcage like a caged beast desperate for escape. I could see the reflection of my determined face in the glass, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows that exaggerated the lines of anxiety etched on my brow. The air was thick with anticipation, and the faint scent of freshly printed reports mingled with the sterile aroma of the building, creating an atmosphere that felt both oppressive and invigorating. I took one last deep breath, my palms sweaty as I clutched the folder containing every piece of evidence I had painstakingly gathered against Mr. Thompson. Memories of his dismissive laughter echoed in my mind, how he had belittled my efforts, how he had orchestrated my downfall with calculated precision. I had transformed that pain into fuel, and now it was time to unleash my plan. My resolve hardened. I would not let fear dictate my next steps. As I stepped into the boardroom, I was greeted by the familiar faces of my colleagues, some of whom cast wary glances my way. I could feel their skepticism radiating off them like heat waves, but I had come too far to turn back now. I cleared my throat, the sound reverberating in the silence that had fallen over the room. Thank you all for gathering today. I know this has been a turbulent time for all of us, I began, my voice steady, though a tremor of vulnerability lingered beneath the surface. I'm here to share something important, something that changes everything we've been discussing. What you don't know is that I have evidence proving Mr. Thompson's misconduct and betrayal. He misled us regarding our financial projections and manipulated the board for his own gain, I stated, my gaze locking onto Mr. Thompson's shocked expression. The room erupted in murmurs as disbelief washed over my colleagues, their eyes darting between me and him. That's ridiculous, you're just trying to shift the blame, he spat, his voice rising in anger, the flush of his face betraying his desperation. I could see sweat beading on his forehead, and for a moment I relished the sight. This was the man who had tried to destroy my career, and now he was facing the consequences of his actions. I continued, undeterred by his outburst. I have emails, financial records, and witness statements that corroborate everything I'm saying. You all deserve to know the truth, and it's time to hold him accountable for his actions. This ends with me taking control of the narrative, not just for myself but for all of us who have been wronged. My voice trembled with the weight of my conviction, but I pressed on, feeling the momentum shift in my favor. The room was now a cacophony of voices, some in support of me, others still clinging to Thompson's facade. I could see the doubt in their eyes slowly transforming into realization as the evidence piled up. The tension was palpable, and I relished every moment. This was my moment of reckoning, my chance to reclaim my power in a world that had tried to silence me. As I laid out the documents before the board, I felt a rush of satisfaction mixed with fear. What if he retaliated? What if I lost everything? But as I looked around the room, the weight of my actions became lighter. I was finally standing up for myself, and I could sense the shift in the air. The tide was turning, and I was ready to ride the wave of change, no matter where it led me. The soft glow of the afternoon sun filtered through the sheer curtains of my living room, casting a warm light that felt almost foreign after the storm of emotions I had weathered. I sank into the plush embrace of my couch, my fingers tracing the intricate patterns of the fabric, grounding me in a moment of calm. The events of the past few weeks replayed in my mind like a relentless film reel, each frame a reminder of the chaos I had unleashed. The air was thick with the scent of fresh coffee, a comforting aroma that reminded me of the quiet mornings I used to cherish before everything spiraled out of control. I had finally confronted Mr. Thompson, the man whose greed had driven me to the brink. The showdown had been intense, the air crackling with tension as I laid bare the truth of his manipulations. I had walked away feeling a mix of empowerment and guilt, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. But now, in the stillness of my home, the weight of my actions settled heavily on my shoulders. I had exposed him, but at what cost? The thought of my colleagues, those who had once cheered my successes, now divided by my choices, gnawed at my conscience. As I reflected on the aftermath, I felt a flicker of relief mixed with a lingering sense of unease. The company had begun to heal, slowly piecing together the fragments of trust that had shattered. I had organized a series of open forums, allowing my team to voice their concerns and suggestions. Their willingness to engage in dialogue surprised me, igniting a spark of hope within me. I realized that rebuilding would take time, but the path forward seemed clearer now. Perhaps my ambition had led me astray, but it could also be a force for good if channeled properly. Yet the guilt shadowed my newfound clarity. How many lives had been affected by my decisions? I could still hear the echoes of my colleagues' voices, their disappointment palpable in the silence that followed my announcement. I had made mistakes, and though I was on the road to redemption, the scars of betrayal would take longer to heal. I understood now that true leadership meant more than just making decisions. It was about fostering a culture of trust and empathy. With a deep breath, I picked up my phone and dialed Lisa's number, my heart racing as the familiar ring echoed in my ear. When she answered, her voice was cautious yet hopeful, and I felt a surge of determination. I wanted to mend the rift, to show her that I was willing to learn from my mistakes. This was not just about my redemption. It was about rebuilding the bonds that had frayed under the weight of my ambition. I could feel the warmth of the sun on my face, a gentle reminder that even after the darkest storms, light could break through, illuminating the path ahead. The soft glow of the afternoon sun filtered through the sheer curtains of my home office, casting a warm light that danced across the room, illuminating the remnants of my journey. I sat at my desk, the familiar scent of coffee lingering in the air, a comforting reminder of the late nights spent contemplating my next steps. The chaos of my past felt like a distant storm, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. My fingers lightly traced the edges of my laptop, the cool metal grounding me as I reflected on the transformation that had taken place within me. I had emerged from the turmoil, not just as a survivor but as a beacon of resilience. The memory of my confrontation with Mr. Thompson and the subsequent fallout lingered, but instead of fear, I felt empowered. I had turned my experiences into lessons, not just for myself but for others who might find themselves in similar situations. My journey was not merely about revenge, it had evolved into something greater, an opportunity to inspire. I envisioned my YouTube channel, a platform where I could share my story, the ups and downs, the triumphs and failures. I wanted to connect with others, to show them that even in the darkest moments, there is a path to redemption. The idea thrilled me, and I could already picture the community that would form, people supporting each other, sharing their struggles and victories. As I prepared to record my first video, I felt a surge of excitement. The camera would capture not just my words but the passion behind them. I wanted to reach out to those who felt lost, to remind them that they were not alone in their battles. This was my chance to use my voice for good, to inspire others to rise above their circumstances. With a deep breath, I hit record, my heart racing with anticipation. I was ready to share my truth, my journey, and my hope for the future. "Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell," I said, a smile spreading across my face as I concluded. I was no longer just Ava, I was a force for change, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next.